I'm Margie. Sitting here on the balcony of my friend Lily's apartment in San Francisco, sipping a glass of wine as the city lights twinkle below, I can hardly believe how far I've come. Just a few months ago, I was trapped in a nightmare, a shadow of the woman I am today. The day I walked into the San Francisco headquarters for the final showdown with my ex-husband, Ryan, was like stepping into a battlefield. The executive conference room was filled with a tense energy, the air thick with the weight of what was about to happen. The CEO sat at the head of the table, flanked by the heads of legal, compliance, and finance. I took my seat along the side, my notepad open, my pen steady. The door opened, and Ryan walked in. His face was a mask of arrogance and unease. When he saw me, the mask cracked, and a sneer tugged at his lips. "You again," he muttered under his breath, but everyone heard it. The head of compliance began, laying out the multiple irregularities they'd found in the logistics division where Ryan worked. Contracts lacking valid vendor information, invoices without signatures, payments routed to entities with no business history. He slid a thick folder across the table. "Your name appears repeatedly on authorizations," he said. Ryan glanced at the folder and then back at the panel. "Clerical errors. That's all. You know how these things pile up," he said, trying to sound confident. The head of legal responded evenly, "Clerical errors do not explain fabricated signatures or ghost vendors. These aren't isolated mistakes. They form a pattern." Ryan's bravado started to falter. "You think this is me? Maybe you should be looking at her," he jabbed a finger at me. "She's my wife. She's had it out for me for months. This is personal." I kept my gaze on the papers before me, my pen moving with quiet precision. I drew a neat line beneath my last note and continued writing. My silence was louder than his outburst. The CEO leaned forward, his tone clipped. "Mr. Thompson, this is not about personal disputes. This is about company integrity. The evidence is clear." As the compliance team presented chart after chart, and the legal team pointed out contracts with empty lot vendor addresses, and the finance team traced payments disappearing into illegitimate accounts, Ryan's face turned crimson. He slammed a hand on the table. "I won't sit here and be accused like this." The CEO's voice carried finality. "You don't have a choice. The board has reviewed the findings. Effective immediately, you are suspended from duty. Your employment with this company is terminated pending further investigation. This matter will be referred to federal authorities." Ryan shoved his chair back, the screech of metal on tile loud in the charged silence. "This isn't over," he shouted, his voice cracking between rage and panic. "You'll all regret this. And you," he pointed directly at me, his hand shaking. "You'll pay for this humiliation." The guards took hold of his arms and guided him firmly toward the door. His protests echoed down the hall until they faded. I exhaled slowly, my pen finally resting on the pad. I hadn't said more than a handful of words, but I had witnessed the downfall of the man who had once made me tremble in my own home. But it wasn't always like this. I grew up in a small town in Idaho. My parents were hard-working people. My father was a mechanic, and my mother was a schoolteacher. They were loving and supportive, always encouraging me to pursue my dreams. I was a bright student, and I knew from a young age that I wanted to be a lawyer. After graduating from law school, I landed a job at one of the largest technology companies in Portland. I was on top of the world, a rising star in the legal field. That's where I met Ryan. He was charming at first, always showering me with attention. We got married, and at the beginning, it seemed like a fairy tale. But slowly, the cracks started to show. Ryan became controlling. He would criticize my clothes, my cooking, everything I did. The first time he hit me, I was in shock. It was over something as trivial as a shirt not being ironed properly. I was a senior corporate attorney, respected in the courtroom, but at home, I was a prisoner. I would wake up early in the morning, dabbing foundation over the bruises on my face, trying to hide the evidence of his abuse. I was so afraid of what people would think, of the whispers in the boardrooms. I thought my reputation as a successful attorney would be ruined if anyone found out. Ryan's temper was like a ticking time bomb. A wrong word, a wrong look, and he would explode. I lived in constant fear, walking on eggshells around him. I had all the knowledge of the law at my fingertips, but it seemed useless against his fists and his psychological manipulation. One evening, I made him soup. I had cooked it twice, afraid it would be too salty. But when he took a spoonful, his eyes narrowed. "What the hell is this? Did you even taste it before serving?" "Too salty. Always too damn careless," he roared. I froze, gripping the edge of the counter. I measured, I started to say, but the words died on my lips. He slammed the spoon onto the table and stood up, towering over me. "You think you're so smart with your job, your fancy degree. But you can't even make a simple meal, right?" Before I could react, his hand connected with my cheek, sending me stumbling backward. The chair behind me toppled as I hit the floor. Pain exploded across my face, radiating down my neck. I lay there, the metallic taste of blood in my mouth, listening to the ringing silence that followed his rage. After a few minutes, I pushed myself up, my body trembling. I walked to the bathroom cabinet and pulled out antiseptic and cotton pads. I was so used to this ritual of covering up the damage. I also had an old smartphone hidden beneath the sink. I took pictures of my bruises, knowing that someday, I might need proof. But it was my neighbor, Mrs. Green, an elderly woman who lived across the hall, who changed everything. One morning, as I was lingering at my front door, she stepped out with a small trash bag. She looked at me for a moment longer than courtesy required. Later that day, after work, I found myself standing before her door. I knocked softly, and she opened the door, releasing the warm aroma of baked cookies. "Come in, dear." "I was just making tea," she said. As we sat at the kitchen table, she broke the silence. "You don't have to pretend with me, Margie. I've lived in this building for 25 years. The walls are thin. I hear more than I should." I tried to form words, but instead, tears filled my eyes. She reached across the table and covered my hand with her wrinkled one. "It's all right. You don't have to carry it alone." She told me about her own experience with an abusive husband. "I stayed too long because I believed his lies. But I finally left, and I've never regretted it," she said. She encouraged me to start keeping records, to get a witness. "I'll be your witness, Margie. I'll stand in that courtroom and tell the truth about what I've heard." That night, I made a decision. I went to the Portland Police Bureau and filed a report of domestic violence. The officer was kind and professional. I showed him the pictures on my phone and told him about Mrs. Green as a witness. I also requested a restraining order. It was a terrifying step, but I knew it was necessary. I went to stay with my friend Lily in San Francisco. Even in this safe space, Ryan's presence lingered. He would call and leave messages, some filled with remorse, others with fury. But I saved every message, knowing it was evidence. Then, my boss, Miss Harris, called me. She needed my expertise for an internal audit at the Portland branch. There were irregularities in the logistics division, and she trusted me to handle the legal side. I was filled with dread at the thought of going back to Portland, back to the place where Ryan still worked. But I also felt a sense of resolve. I knew this could be my chance to fight back. At the Portland branch office, the compliance team arrived unannounced. I walked in, my ID badge clipped to my blazer, looking like any other senior attorney. But inside, my heart was pounding. When Ryan walked into the conference room and saw me, his body stiffened. "You," he said, harsh and incredulous. I remained calm, asking him clinical questions about the shipping discrepancies. He tried to bluster his way out, but the evidence was too strong. After the long drawn-out questioning, he was suspended, and the process of terminating his employment began. And then came the divorce hearing. I walked into the Multnomah County Circuit Court with my attorney by my side. The courtroom was filled with anticipation. Ryan sat across the aisle, his face set in a mask of fury. My attorney presented the photographs of my bruises, the medical records, and then Mrs. Green took the stand. Her calm, unwavering testimony was like a lifeline. The judge looked at the evidence and said, "This court grants Ms. Thompson exclusive possession of the marital residence. Mr. Thompson is prohibited from contact under a permanent restraining order. Furthermore, spousal support shall be awarded to Ms. Thompson in recognition of the financial and emotional harm endured." Ryan erupted, but the judge quickly put him in his place. I gathered my papers quietly, feeling the weight of the decree settle over me like a cloak. It wasn't triumph, it was release. Weeks passed, and I returned to my office at the tech company. Ms. Harris welcomed me back and asked me to lead regional compliance. I accepted with quiet resolve. Now, as I sit here on the balcony, looking out at the city, I can finally breathe. I'm free from the chains of abuse, and I'm ready to embrace the future.